special live stream event celebrating 20 incredible seasons of Native Report. I'm Rita Karppinen, and it's an honor to have you join us tonight as we reflect on the legacy of this groundbreaking show. Over the past 2 decades, Native Report has shared stories of Indigenous resilience, culture, and innovation, making a meaningful impact both locally and nationally. This evening, we're thrilled to welcome back some of the key voices who shaped Native Report over the years. From its creators to its hosts, these individuals brought authenticity and passion to every episode. We'll hear their reflections, learn about their favorite moments, and celebrate the enduring importance of Indigenous storytelling. So without further ado, let's meet our special guests for tonight. Please welcome former hosts and creators of Native Report, Tad Johnson, Stacy Thunder, and Dr. Arnie Bainio. Let's start off by introducing ourselves, your tribal affiliation, and let our viewers know which seasons you worked on Native Report. Tad, why don't you kick things off?
Thanks, Rita. I'm a member of the Boys Fort Band of Chippewa, and I worked on seasons 1 through 10.
Thank you for sharing that, Tad. Your influence has been integral to the success of the show. Stacy, can you share a little bit about yourself with us?
Yes, hi, and congrats. I'm Stacy Thunder, and I'm from Red Lake. I'm Red Lake, Ojibwe, and also from Lakudere. And like Tad, I was on seasons 1 through 10.
Thank you. Both of you have done such an amazing work with Native Report over the years. We really appreciate you being here with us tonight. Dr. Bainio, how long have you been with Native Report?
Since season 11, 9 years.
Thank you for joining Native Report 9 years ago, and it's an honor to share space with all of you guys. Over the past 20 years, we've shared a lot of amazing Indigenous stories across Indian country. So just want to say miigwech to all of you. Now for myself, I am your current host, Rita Karppinen, and I'm a citizen of the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, with also ancestral ties to White Earth, Grand Portage, and Turtle Mountain. I've had the honor of working on the show since the 11th season. So before we dive into individual interviews, let's reflect on some remarkable achievements of Native Report. Over 20 years, the show has aired on 193 channels nationwide, reaching millions of viewers and sparking meaningful conversations about Indigenous life and culture. Here's a standout statistic. Within the last few years, we found that 68% of the local Native population tune in weekly to PBS North. That's an incredible connection and speaks to the station's role as a trusted source of stories and information for the community. Native Report has also won several awards, the latest being Best Multimedia and Two-Spirit Coverage from National Native Media Awards tonight. Tonight, we celebrate the legacy and the many stories yet to come. We want to hear from you, so make sure you stick around to the end. You'll be able to leave us questions in the comments that our guests will answer at the end of tonight's show. So Tad and Stacy, you two are the original creators and hosts of Native Report. Tad, as one of the original creators, you were instrumental in bringing Native Report to life. What inspired you to start the show, and what was your vision for it?
Well, the Native Report and PBS, this WDSC station, has a Citizens Advisory Board, and I was on that. And as a good Native American, I said, why aren't you doing more things for Native Americans and on telling our stories? And they, rather than shunning me, said, what would you like to do? What do you think we should do? So next thing I knew, Julie Kellner was interested in producing a program with us. Stacy and I worked together at Mille Lacs. I was the Solicitor General of the General Counsel, and we had a lot of local opposition to us from some of the non-Indians there. There were 3 anti-Indian groups, and we wanted to just show that American Indians, Native Americans, are just regular folks. And that was the idea behind the show, to kind of promote understanding and do some educational pieces on who we are as a people, and that we are mathematicians, we are computer scientists, violinists, everything you can think of. And so the idea was to show people who we are and kind of gain some understanding and hope to gain some respect from the local communities.
Thank you, Tad. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the work and the foresight that you both had in creating the show. Stacy, you have brought such warmth and energy to your time on Native Report. What does the show mean to you personally?
It means a lot of things. It's just starting from the very beginning. Tad and I were colleagues in Mille Lacs. We're both attorneys. So we didn't have any experience in television. And so for me, it was just the kickstart of my whole storytelling side. I've been a storyteller since I was younger, and law school, college just, took me down a different path, but then Tad asked me to do this, and meeting people and telling their stories, it just started a fire. So it opened many doors as a storyteller, as a writer, as an actress. So it means a lot to me because this, like I said, it just kickstarted the whole thing.
Miigwech, I appreciate that insight and that feedback. Tad, looking back, what has surprised you most about the show's journey?
Well, I'm surprised it lasted 20 years. It's kind of amazing to me. But I think there's been a lot of support in the Native American community, and the show has always been funded by one or more of the tribes and also local community foundations. And I know it's got a lot of viewership because it's been 10 years since I left the show. I still get recognized, and they're like, "Wow, you got older." And I said, "Well, I haven't been on the show for 10 years." Anyway, but I think we had, stories to tell, a lot of stories to tell, a lot of people out there doing great things for their communities. And that was the impetus for, we knew there were more stories out there, and so when we left, we wanted to ensure that the program kept going, and the station assured us that it would, and we're really glad that it did.
And I think there's still a lot of stories to be told from Indian country. So let's take a look at one of Tad's favorite segments from the early days of Native Report.
On this cool fall morning, the waves of Lake Superior splash against the rock face, where the spirit little cedar tree has stood for ages. To understand the tree's significance, you must understand a bit of Ojibwe history.
What we're told through oral history is that our people left the East Coast probably about between 12 and 14,000 years ago. And what they say, it was a sacred migration that took approximately 4,000 years. So when the people hit a place called Bowie Tong, which is today called Sault Ste. Marie, it was there they settled for a while, and it was from there again they continued the journey. And what they did is they split. Some of the clans went the northern part of the lake, and the other clans went the southwestern part of the lake. And the people here in Grand Portage are descendants of those clans that left Sault Ste. Marie and came the northern part. And so we're talking about our people probably getting here thousands of years ago. The name of the tree was Manidugijigans, the spirit little cedar tree. And they knew that this was a sacred place. And so it was felt that then some people should stay here. Another thing they understood about this tree is that it was a boundary. That it would be a boundary, and as you can see, the tree is pointing out, and it's pointing out. If you go straight out there, eventually you're going to hit Isle Royal. So they knew that Isle Royal was also a sacred place, and that so they did ceremonies around the tree. And at some point in time, the people then knew that they were supposed to go out to Isle Royal because that was a sacred area. Not only was it used for hunting and gathering purposes, but it was also used for ceremonies.
Located on the Grand Portage Indian Reservation in northeastern Minnesota, offerings to the spirit of the tree are made in the present, much like they were in the past.
There's spirits in the water that live, that what we call living in the natural order of the world, and that's their place. They say there's a there's a big large snake, serpent that lives in Lake Superior. And it's so our people understood that, and so before they left for Isle Royale, they would have to put tobacco and acknowledge this tree and ask for a safe journey. It's a sacred marker for this area that our people came and understood and acknowledged that this was something that was to be taken care of, honored, and looked after, because it was here for a purpose to protect this area and protect the people and keep it safe.
Understanding of the tree goes hand in hand with the understanding of one's own existence.
We have culture, we have a way of life. Bimatizi win, the good life. And so this is part of that Bimatasa win, to understand that we have to honor sacred places and sacred things. And if we continue doing that, honoring those things and honoring all creation, that we will have a good life. And the people will be safe, they'll be protected, they'll understand the need to share, to take care of each other, to respect each other, understand, love each other. So it's very important that the future generation doesn't understand this place, even Grand Portage, the whole area of Grand Portage, that our ancestors preserved this area for us. It's only been through years of going out and seeking that knowledge of the traditions and the history and the understandings that over the years I began to really understand the significance of this tree to our people.
So hearing from former Councilman John Moran from Grand Portage, you know, it's really amazing to hear the importance of the spirit tree. What did you guys think about the clip?
I love that story because that was supposed to be a story about the spirit tree. And John Moran and I just taught a class together last week. And with John, you get the entire Ojibwe world viewpoint. And so for him, everything ties together: the tree, the lake, the traditions, the language. And you get this viewpoint of the world that is unlike any other people's. Wanda Sayers, who narrated that, is from Red Lake. And I love the segment and the music. And anyway, we picked a couple of programs for our last show that we did when we left in 2015. And to me, that just continues to resonate as something that's evocative of Ojibwe culture and the importance of it.
Thank you.
That was a beautiful and important history, and hearing things from traditional people and hearing it told instead of reading it is important, and to be able to hear it the way they know it. That was beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I totally agree with you about when we hear it from our elders, you know, it resonates deep down into who we are as beings. So I appreciate both your guys' comments. Now, Stacy, can you share a memorable moment or story from your time as a host?
I have many. There's so many. Like Tad and I said, we were with Native Report for, I'd say 10 seasons, but we did a pilot of 4 episodes too, right. So 11 years. And I think for me, my favorite part was just meeting people, going on the road, meeting people, hearing their stories. And I mean, I think we're going to do the Badlands clip. There were so many to choose. I have so many favorites, but this particular one at the Badlands, I loved because I was with Julie Kellner, who was our producer, and we just had such a great time that there was a mouse in our cabin. I mean, it was just a lot of fun. So I just have a lot of fun memories and a lot of favorite stories. It's just hard to pin down one story.
Absolutely. Well, here's the segment Stacy chose as one of her favorites. Check this out.
Our location is in the southwest part of South Dakota. We're located about 70 miles east of Mount Rushmore. We have in the park 244,000 acres, half of which is located on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and the other half, of course, is the North Unit. And as you can see around you, the Badlands was designated as a park because it's Badlands. Initially, it wasn't really of any use to the local pioneers when they went through, and it was designated as such back in the early part of the 50s, and became a park as it required more land. The Badlands is noted for its beauty. There's incredible, you can see quiet out here. People come just to see what the place was like, and there's no people. The Badlands also is noted for the fossils. We have an incredible number of fossils in the Badlands, and the geology of the place also, of course, is an attraction. We have also bison, about 600 plus bison in the park. We introduced black-footed ferret and kit foxes.
Are there any sacred sites within the Badlands? And what is the historical relationship the Oglala have with this land?
There are sacred sites in the Badlands, and let me give you just a brief history of the involvement or the Oglalas. The Oglalas, of course, own this part of they actually own the park initially. I mean, the property in which the park stands, but at this point, but through the course of years and through the westward expansion of the white population, the establishment of reservations, Pine Ridge was set up as a reservation, and during the Second World War, the South Unit at the time was purchased by the military as a bombing range. As a result, there are still ordinances in the South Unit, and later on, when it wasn't being used anymore as a bombing range, the military attempted to give it to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs didn't want it, so the Park Service then took the property. The land is still owned by the tribe. We have a management easement. That's the National Park Service has a management easement on the South Unit. And what we're in the process of looking at right now is a general management plan that will define how that South Unit will be utilized into the future.
So as a superintendent who happens to be Native American, how does that affect how you manage the park?
My heritage, my background has, I believe, contributed to the perspective that we have here, as would anyone's background, I would add, to managing any place, be it a park or a corporation or whatever else. In this particular instance, I believe that being raised on a reservation, also working with not only my own tribe, but also other tribes in the past, and I would add, working with county governments in other parts of the country, as well as foundations and non-Indian public as well, has contributed to a fabric that has really helped in building a philosophy that's encompassing, that we try to continue the Organic Act #1. That is, how do we maintain this park into the future?
You know, getting out in Indian country and really understanding the stories that we're covering for Native Report is an amazing experience. Stacy, can you talk to us about visiting historical ancestral sites?
Well, I think visiting any place is an honor. Like I love visiting many places, but visiting, for example, the Badlands was, you just feel it, and the stories that we created on our own while covering the stories and talking to Dr. Paige Baker. I don't know. I think being in the place is very powerful and meaningful to me.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry, real quick. Tad mentioned, somebody said you looked older, and I'm looking at young me. It's just so crazy how young I look now. But yeah, that was 4th season, and you're now in 20. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be part of our first 10.
Absolutely. Dr. Vinio, do you have any comments on the clip that we just saw from the Badlands?
Yeah, I love the Badlands. And when I was in residency at the Seattle Indian Health Board in 1996, I spent 6 weeks at Pine Ridge and got to see the Badlands from the perspective of elders and people who live there, not so much as a tourist. And it's a spiritual place, and it's just so spiritual.
Language. I hope someday soon I can come visit the Badlands as well. It sounds like an amazing place to really understand some true tribal history, and I appreciate Native Report for covering that segment. So Dr. Vinio, your passion for Indigenous health really shone during your time with Native Report. Why do you think this platform is so important for Indigenous communities?
Because people watch it. The Latin word docere means doctor comes from that, and it means to teach. And I think that's a big part of my job is to teach. And if I taught all my patients how to take care of themselves and gave away all my trade secrets and they didn't come back to see me because they were healthy, that would be fine. And but sometimes things that seem simple we forget when we going to medical school or going to law school. You learn an entirely different language, that people that don't know that language don't understand. So, when you use big words, big medical words, it loses people, and people are too respectful to ask about it. So, so it's important for me to teach, and the nurses laugh at me because I've got this big anatomic flip chart that I always have with me, and I'm showing 4-year-olds how their ear works and where their ear infection is, and your eustachian tube, and I name them, and I get them to look through the scope. And brand new babies, brand spanking new babies, I talk to them about medical school, and I tell them, listen, you have great potential, and you have the ability to learn all these things, and I want this inside you. And I've had people watch Native Report. I've been recognized at the Seattle airport, and there are very few days that go by that somebody doesn't come up to me somewhere and say they watch Native Report and they love it.
Absolutely. And I think your segment particularly is, it embodies what you find important, that storytelling and that education and that teaching. Another question I got for you is, what's one thing you'd like people to know about Indigenous health?
That, we do have a lot of diabetes, and we have other things that come from, I'm going to get in trouble, but fry bread is not a traditional food. And some of the things that we use as traditional foods really aren't good for us. If we, the foods that we were given originally, wild rice and maple syrup and fish that we harvest ourselves, if you eat those things, and if you go out and harvest them, it's a lot of work getting wild rice, especially some years when the lakes are low, or anytime. And but I feel that's important from a medical standpoint, that we practice our traditions.
Absolutely. Dr. Vinio, is there a story that has resonated with you throughout the years?
Yes. Keith Secola did Beyond the Music, and Keith Secola is a musician, but he's a songwriter and a producer and a storyteller and a genius. And he cares about Native people, and that comes through when he's talking and when he's singing. But when he's on stage, he tells stories, and he tells why things are important, and he talks about boarding school and those children praying to the stars, and those prayers not coming back down to them, but coming back down to maybe us generations later, and as stories, as songs, as teachings, as lawyers, as physicians. And that healing the music at the Super Bowl is like high sugar music. You know, there's a lot of energy and a lot of sensation that's around it. But you know, the music that you listen to from Keith or from traditional musicians is, you know, the sound of the wind is in there, the sound of the water is in there, and healing happens there. You know, it's healing is not out there somewhere; it's here, and that's all part of what I found so beautiful about that segment.
Absolutely. Let's watch a clip of Dr. Vaino's favorite segment.
You know, like there's a song that I play on my flute a lot, and it's called When the Buffalo Return His Children. And it's about this prophecy that the Lakota people have, that the buffalo will return his children. And we see it in our lifetime. You know, in some form, if we know the immense slaughter of the buffalo and the correlation of our people too. But now we see these small herds coming, like a small kids playing and selling bracelets and sweets things and laughing, you know, and being part of the healing, normalizing being happy.
You know, that would be something to see, wouldn't it? The normalizing of being happy. You know, we have been living, you know, in this shadow for some time, and I don't think we were meant to be living this way. I think we were meant for something much better, much nicer, and that our children will have that experience.
Oh, okay. All right. So
And this thing is a long game for Native people. Doing things today that will help the long game. We're not saying it's going to change overnight because we know better, but we play this long game for our children and our great-grandchildren and things like that.
Say your name, show your face, leave no trace of the chain. Tears come falling, 500 years. Prayers of our children, late at night, down the hall, monsters scream, roll and crawl. Don't tell get bad dreams, prayers of our children.
Well, that was a great clip from Keith Secola, and just like you said, you know, when you hear his music, you hear the elements that are true to who we are as Indigenous peoples. Dr. Vaino, do you have any insight on the clip that we just watched?
Yeah, I think when I think of musicians and artists and writers and people that do creative things are, when we're born, we're all singers and dancers and storytellers, and somehow learning to color inside the lines in kindergarten and some other things, and you know, eventually buying car insurance and some of those things takes that away from us somehow and convinces us we're not singers and we're not dancers and we're not songwriters and we're not writers. And there are people that remember that, and they remind us that those things are there, that that you walk outside at night and the stars, that you know how small we are and that we're just a part of that, and somehow that we came from there. And people can look up at, you know, driving by, you see frost in the trees on a sunny morning after a cold snap, and the world is just so beautiful, but you know, you're trying to get to work on time and you know, trying to watch out for somebody that's not staying in their lane, and you know, and artists remind us that there are important things that we're here for.
Absolutely, beautifully stated. I appreciate your reflection on that, because I don't know if I could have put it so eloquently. So I appreciated that you did the hard work and did that for us. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to take some time and share what moments have stood out to me during the time on the show. So I would like to share that with you. You know, I also see Native Report continuing to evolve and grow into the coming years. And I think if we just reflect back on the expanding part and share about my favorite part of the show, one of my favorite segments is sharing time with one of the Fond du Lac elders, Joyce Laporte, who really spent time with me teaching about faceless dolls. And you know, that segment was really special to me, is because it resonates with what Tad says, with what Stacy shares, with what Dr. Vainio also shared about spending time in Indian country, spending time with elders, learning and listening, because that just feeds who you are in your spirit. So let's watch a clip from my favorite story now. In the quiet of her living room, Joyce Laporte sews together pieces of buckskin, then stuffs them to make a simple figurine. This is the Ojibwe Faceless doll. I visited Joyce to learn more about this traditional craft.
I make the Ojibwe Faceless dolls. I've done the small, child size, the 6-inch warrior mom, you know, and even a pregnant one. And then I do the 18-inch ones, but those are mostly go to museums.
How long have you been making the faceless dolls?
Since 1982, because I learned that I was going to have my first granddaughter. So the grandmas are the makers of the dolls to teach the young ones how to use the needle. I do it on buckskin, deer hide, and I do it on the split. I make the body out of the split hide, because I learned that if I did it from the regular hide, it has too much stretch in it, and then you don't get a uniform doll. It's kind of like distorted. And when I first started making them, I stuffed them with cattail, but now I have to use buffalo hair. Because I have health problems now and I can't get out into the swamps and gather the cattail. So I just had to figure out something that was just as soft as the cattail, and I chose the buffalo hair. And then I dress the doll and put horsehair on their heads, and then just decorate it with it, give them a little pouch or a bag or a drum if I'm doing the little men. If I work steady on it, I can sew the doll in 3 hours, and then by the time they're dressed and they have their hair and everything, it's probably closer to 8 that it takes me. The 18-inch ones will probably take me a week or more to make one of them. When I work on a doll, it's very calming. It's to keep my grandmother alive in my life, because when I do make the dolls, I think about her. I think about her little fingers, because she was a tiny woman, and she was just always doing something, always telling us a story, always creating something, and it just keeps her alive in my mind. To me, it's my grandmother speaking to me through that doll.
Well, that is definitely one of my favorite clips. Although I have very many that come from Native Report, I just want to do a special shout out to Fond du Lac Elder Joyce Laporte, who shares her time so generously in our community to teach us about faceless dolls. And a shout out to all our elders across Indian country that generously share their time with community members across Indian country. Sharing and passing down that knowledge is extremely important. So any thoughts about the faceless dolls? Have you guys seen Joyce Laporte's work?
No, but I think some of our best stories are when we go interview local people on reservations. I remember, I think during our first season, we went up to the Boys Fort Reservation and interviewed somebody who was holding a language camp in her backyard. And sometimes those little things that go on the reservations, those traditions that continue on, in small ways, also demonstrates, how people are carrying on traditions in their communities and in quiet ways doing nice things with kids and keeping those traditions going is so important.
Absolutely. I think you're totally right about it showing passing down traditions, and it also demonstrates that resilience piece in Indian country. The resilience of our teachings and the resilience of our people. So while former host Ernie Stevens couldn't make it tonight, he did let us know which segment was his favorite. Let's take a peek now.
The forest canopy provides just enough shade from the midday sun as we hike through the forest in Juneau County, Wisconsin. Our guide today is former Ho-Chunk Nation President Cloris Lowe, an amateur archaeologist who is leading us to a most remarkable place.
We're at a site today that is very special to me personally and to my family, and obviously to many other people within the nation. This particular site is located on the edge of the Driftless area in Wisconsin. The Driftless area covers actually 4 states, primarily Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, and northwestern Illinois. This site here really doesn't have a name, but I call this the Thunderbird panel. While it doesn't exclusively have Thunderbirds on it, most of the images here that were made by the people that came before us, our ancestors, are images of skyclan birds. And it's amazing that they have survived as long as they have, given the fact that this is on the edge of the Driftless. It is known by some people, non-native people, but for the most part today, it remains anonymous on the landscape, which has, I think, helped a lot of it most recently over the last 40 or 50 years. I first came to this area almost 60 years ago, 58 years ago. It was the first time I saw this panel when I was a young boy. I was brought out here by my father, and he said, "You need to see this because this is important, and it'll become more important as you learn more through the course of your life." What we have on here are many different Thunderbirds. This is a place that in this entire system of cliffs and valleys, this is the only area that really shows birds that have been carved into the rock and the rock faces here. One of the things you'll see when you look at this rock art panel here, aside from the petroglyphs that are here, you'll see a tremendous amount of graffiti. It's something that when I take a look at it, I get a hollow pit in my stomach. It makes me feel bad. What protects a great many of these sites is that their locations are not shared to the general public. I think sacred is a word that's perhaps overused a lot today, but I would consider this to be in many ways a sacred site because of our people that are here. All Native peoples, our ancestors, the people that preceded us here to this world, as we see it today, they were here and they left this for us. And I think it's good for us to think about that and then to internalize that. And maybe that's the message that they're leaving, is this is important. This is a part of who you are. This is a part of who we are as a people. We were here at one time, and we know people will follow us into the future. And we're leaving this for you to contemplate, to work with, and to understand what's important in life.
You know, I wish we had Ernie to be here to kind of tell us some of the reasons why that was his favorite segment. I mean, I can imagine just the importance of a Thunderbird and how special and meaningful that is to all of us. But Ernie, we wish you were here, and we're going to turn the conversation over to our viewers. We're going to open up the floor to questions from our viewers. So feel free to ask about the show's history, the stories we've covered, or anything else you'd like to know. Just leave us a question in the comments. So I'll start us off though. What's a story you didn't get to tell but wish you had?
I'll go. I think primarily because we're attorneys and we see a lot of things that are controversial going on out there in Indian country. And we wanted to kind of do stories about Native American perspectives on the land. And you'd have to get into some stories about extractive industries, and that's very sensitive in this neck of the woods. And so we didn't want to be anti-mining or anti-logging or anything, but we wanted to explain what that meant to Native Americans, and especially underlining their unique relationship with the land, the water, other things like that. But my mom used to work for this station, and so she always told me, we do nice stories here. So, and that's great. I think the stories that we do about Indian people and Native American culture are very good. But we didn't get into some of the meatier things we wanted to get into. And, I think the show goes on just fine without that. But, we wanted to push the envelope a little more.
Absolutely.
Well, I was going to say that I really can't remember a particular story, but there were more than a few. I mean, I loved traveling across Indian country, and there was just so many. I mean, Tad and I did 150 episodes. That's how many, 3 stories per episode, and even 150 times 3. I mean, that still didn't feel like enough. So I just can't pinpoint them down, but I knew there were a few.
Right. Well, hopefully for the next 20 plus seasons from now, we can get to those stories and get to that storytelling that we haven't approached yet for Native Report. Dr. Vinio?
I think some of the things that I talk about from a health standpoint, there are some things that are just too complicated, and I've written plenty of things that I can't do in just a few minutes, and my wife, Ivy, is my proofreader, and I'll get done with something, she's like, that didn't mean anything. And and I don't take offense at that. If she doesn't understand it, or if I'm using too many statistics or whatever, they get dry and they get boring, even though they're exciting to me. So I want to tell the things that people want to hear, and that people need to hear. And I was trying to buy an apple in the store one time. That was a year ago, and a veteran came up to me, and he was so happy to meet me and that I would talk about health issues and he had PTSD, and he said he doesn't go out, he doesn't go to the store, he doesn't talk to anybody, but he felt he could talk to me, and that was just such a powerful. You know, our words are important. The things that we say to people are important, and I still think there are less than a double handful of people that got me into medical school, that guided me the right way, and I always think I ended up in this position, something like a pinball. You know, if it wouldn't have been for certain people, and some did big things for me, some did little things, some just with a couple of sentences, but we're all that person for somebody. And you know, for a kid or even an adult, you know, as adults we paint ourselves into corners, and it's possible to get out of those corners. You just have to have someone believe in you.
Absolutely. That's actually a great segue into the next question. You know, we talk about impact and we talk about influence from people in our lives or us to our communities. How did your time on Native Report influence your personal or professional life? Dr. Vinyl, you want to continue?
It has quite a bit. Knowing that people listen to our words, and knowing that by you know, being a part of this really important show is a way to pay it forward. And there are things that people have done for me that I can't repay, and people who've passed on, you know, that it's the only way I can repay them is to carry their words forward and carry their beliefs and their way of looking at life. You know, we put our best stuff into people all the time, and when we're sitting with, you know, when we're sitting with each other and talking between segments, you know, we're putting our best things into each other, and those are the things that we carry and we pick up, and it makes us a community.
Absolutely, thank you. That was beautiful. Tad?
I think a lot of the relationships that I had, I worked for the Congress for a while in the Clinton administration, and we ended up interviewing with a lot of those folks, and I suddenly was no longer the friend, or I was a congressional staffer, so I was interviewing the congressman I worked for, and suddenly it was like I became you know, Edward R. Murrow, or you know, and somebody asked me once, I was interviewing a famous golfer, and he said, "What are you, the?" He compared me to somebody on PBS, the Native American Charlie Rose. That's what he said, and so it put me into a whole different light with a whole bunch of folks. So I got to interview the late Bill Richardson, who chaired the subcommittee on Native American Affairs, Ben Nighthorse Campbell, and it was kind of neat to step into, because I used to take orders from these guys, and suddenly I was interviewing them, and it just impacted our whole, the whole dynamic I got used to in working with them. And a lot of people that were just friends, suddenly I was interviewing them, and I was no longer Tad the friend. I was, you know, suddenly, you know, asking kind of difficult, sometimes policy questions, and it was kind of fun.
Absolutely. Stacy, how did your time on Native Report influence your personal or professional life?
Oh, in a lot of ways it has. Like I mentioned earlier, it kickstarted my storytelling career. My kiddos are the same. They're tapping into their creative sides, which I've encouraged all this time. The other thing I didn't mention before is my time on the road or interviewing anyone here locally, the friends I've made along the way. So some of my favorite episodes in the past, like I'm going to mention, shout out to Mary Catherine Nagel, who's also a lawyer. She's a playwright, and she did this powerful segment on the Violence Against Women Act, and she was doing a play where actual survivors, victims, were in this play. So yeah, it's made a huge impact on me in multiple ways, personally, and then just the power of other people's stories.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing about the impact and influence that Native Report has had on your professional and personal life. I can tell you from my perspective that it has opened a lot of opportunities for myself, but it's opened opportunities with the youth in my community. I really feel a strong connection to the little babies and little youth of Indian communities. It always puts a smile on my face. So if I can hopefully inspire or be that person for them to either influence or impact their life in a positive way, I look forward to that. So the next question from our viewers would be, what would you say to the younger generation about storytelling like we do on Native Report? Tad, would you like to start?
Thanks. A lot of what you and I do, Rita, is tribal state relations training. And I think we tell the history of the United States through the eyes of Native Americans at the training. And telling that story over and over again, as we do almost once a month, is really important because we've trained about 8,000 state employees. And most people walk away with the comment that they're angry because they hadn't heard this history from a Native American perspective before. And so telling the story of the United States and other stories that are important. I mean, there are important cultural stories, but what I mainly focus on, and the John Morans of the world focus on the cultural history, which is very important, and stories that emanate from the past and from the culture. I stick to the hard and fast. Here's what happened historically, and people need to hear that. And so storytelling for me is telling the reality of everything from the beginnings of the Americas, the first coming of the Europeans, to everything from the allotment policy, this boarding school policy, the termination policy, and up till today. And those are true history stories that I think we need to, somebody needs to continue to teach the Native American side of history, because it's not taught in schools, and we're hoping that that'll come about eventually. But that type of storytelling is what I do, which is, I think, another side of reality that people haven't seen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Stacey, what would you say to the younger generation about storytelling like we do on Native Report?
I would tell the younger generation, and I tell this to my kids, is to use your voice and tell stories and help other people do the same. So I'd like to pass the baton over to our younger generation, like we did to you with Native Report, to just continue doing that, because there's so many stories to share.
Thank you. Dr. Vainio?
I'd have to echo what Stacey says. Tell your stories, and but listen to stories. And our creation stories teach us how to live, and teach us, Winnebuju, if you listen to the creation stories, sometimes he was wise, and sometimes he was foolish, and sometimes he was generous, and sometimes he was greedy. And but all of those are emotions and qualities that we all have. And even when I'm talking to people from a medical standpoint in visits, but sometimes when I speak at conferences, you can tell stories, and it makes us realize that we're all the same. That we all have the same qualities, and we all have the same faults. Absolutely. And we can work in that framework, and we can support each other.
Mm-hmm. I think you guys are all right, and you hit it on the nose, if I can use that metaphor correctly. The next question, comes from our viewers online, and this is something that I have definitely seen over the seasons that I've covered Native Report, is a huge fan base for Tad and Stacy. I mean, it's massive, and you guys talk about being recognized, and so this question is not surprising to me because I also want to know too. Tad and Stacy, what are you guys doing now, and what after leaving Native Report? Stacy, would you like to go?
Oh, sure. Because Native Report was the jumpstart to my storytelling career, I took an acting class to help with my delivery with a teleprompter. And when I took my acting class, I just started acting in film and television. In fact, a very dear friend of mine was the one who helped me do that as well, and she's here. Her name is Kirsten Gregerson. And actress, still practicing law with Ojibwe tribes. I was with Red Lake, Mille Lacs, and Lakota. But I also produced my own series called Indigenous with Stacy Thunder, and I'm screenwriting now. So I'm writing screenplays and still acting and loving it. And I have 4 kids. Throughout the seasons, we saw me go through 3 pregnancies. I was wearing braces for a couple seasons. And my oldest is 24 and my youngest is 13. And the youngest was actually on camera. Like, I introduced him to Native Report viewers. He was just a tiny baby. He was a couple weeks old, so he's 13 now. So a mom. I mean, I still wear multiple hats, but yeah, that's what I'm doing. I mean, I'm sure there's more, but yeah.
Amazing. That sounds like an incredible jumping point from Native Report and, venturing into different avenues and leaning into that creative side. So love to hear it. I know our viewers love to hear what you're doing what you're up to now. So, Tad?
Well, I didn't even think about that from that perspective. My kids were in grade school when we started the program, and now they both have graduate degrees and they're off in the working world. Married to the same woman for 34 years, and after the show ended, I was doing a couple of things. I was working for Mille Lacs, and I was also a professor of American Indian Studies at UMD. So I'm a professor emeritus now. I had to leave my professorship when I became a regent for the University of Minnesota. So it's 12 people that don't get paid anything that hire the president of the University of Minnesota and determine what the budget is going to be. I'm told it's one of the most coveted volunteer jobs in Minnesota. So I had to run for that. Governor Walz appointed me to the first term, and then I had to run for it in the state legislature. And I managed to get through that process, so I'm on that until 2029. I'm also on the board of the Udall Foundation. Mo Udall was my first boss working for the Congress. I'm vice chair of that, and we run the Native Nations Institute, so we train Native Americans on best practices in running their reservations, very similar to programs we ran at UMD when I was there. And I'm also on the board of the Nature Conservancy. And like Stacy, I'm of counsel with the Jacobson Law Group in St. Paul. And so of counsel is when you're an old lawyer and you haven't sullied your reputation too much and they want to put you on their letterhead. And they told me I could work as much or as little as I wanted to. And I told them it's going to be very little. So I'm keeping very busy, trying to be retired at the same time, keeping my fingers in a bunch of different things.
Well, that is an interesting look into retirement on all the boards that you serve and all the various activities that you spend your time on. So as we look to the future, we're excited to share a sneak peek at what's in store for season 20 of Native Report. Here's a trailer to give you a glimpse of the powerful stories and voices we'll be featuring.
Welcome to Native Report. I'm Stacy Thunder.
Did you know there is a national movement on reservations?
Welcome to Native Report. I'm Ernie Stevens.
And I'm Rita Aspinwall.
I'm Dr. Arnie Vinio.
Bonjour, I'm Rita Karppinen, your host for Native Report.
Celebrate with us as Native Report marks a milestone, our 20th season. For 2 decades, we've been your source for powerful stories and in-depth coverage of Indigenous life and culture. Join us as we look back on the incredible journeys we've shared and dive into a new season filled with fresh, inspiring stories. Don't miss this special season of Native Report, where every story celebrates the rich tapestry of Indigenous life.
And remember to call an elder. They've been waiting for your call.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight to celebrate this incredible milestone. We're grateful to our former hosts and creators for sharing their reflections, and to you, our viewers, for your continued support. Here's to 20 more seasons of Native Report. Good night and miigwech.